Hello! So today I'm going to be talking about Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. I was watching a Ben Reads Good video, and in that video he mentioned this novel. He also talked about how it's about theatre and an actor throughout his life, and he was involved in experimental theatre, and because I lecture in theatre and the arts, and I also run my own theatre company, I was naturally drawn towards it. The novel is set in England, and it spans from the 1960s all the way into the 21st century. Our main protagonist is Dave Wynne, a gay biracial actor who is of English-Burmese descent. We start the novel with Dave in his 60s, and there has been a death of an old friend, and this takes him back on a journey to reminiscing about his life. When Dave is very young, he wins a scholarship to a very prestigious boarding school. This experience opens him up to elite English society, but it also exposes him to racism and class tensions. We follow his journey through queer culture, love affairs, and his career in experimental theatre, and an ending in his later life marriage. The novel is lightly threaded with Dave's connection to Giles Harlow. Giles used to bully Dave at school, but Dave also at one point spent a summer with the Harlow family, exposing him even further to the comings and goings of the elite. Dave and Giles' pathways lead off in vastly different directions, Dave into the arts and Giles into politics. However, through happenstance, they keep bumping into each other throughout their lives. And that's basically it. We just dive into the various aspects of Dave's life throughout this novel. It is a very traditional style novel. It feels very old-fashioned when you're reading it, the use of prose and the story being told. It's very, very simple. An old man reminiscing on his life, and we are getting the experience of the changing queer culture throughout the 60s, 70s and 80s, but also his race. He is biracial, and how the world views him, how England views him, and even how the arts world views him. But it's all told very simply for these different moments throughout his life. So what did I like and what didn't I like? What I liked. I really enjoyed the exploration of race, class and sexuality in this novel. It's all balanced very well throughout. Every sort of element is given equal footing, and I feel like it is all explored in a very kind of delicate but precise way. I found Dave to be a complex and introspective character, sort of navigating his way throughout his different experiences, and I felt like I did really get to know Dave by the end of the novel. I enjoyed Hollinghurst's prose, which was nuanced, and at the same time felt quite old-fashioned, but in a kind of, to start with, refreshing way. I also felt like Hollinghurst did a really good job at kind of littering in these sort of historical details as we are going through this novel, linking the novel to something a little bit richer than just Dave's experiences. There's also a nice little shift at the end of the novel, which resonated with me. Overall, what I really enjoyed about this novel is its themes. I have a lot of negatives about this novel. I'm just going to say it now. I didn't really enjoy this novel at all. However, I do feel like the themes and what it's exploring is crystal clear throughout, and I feel like Hollinghurst has done a very good job at sort of subtly getting that across whilst allowing us to sort of richly connect to Dave as a character. And honestly, for a lot of readers, that is going to be absolutely enough, and they might end up really falling in love with this novel, but there are things that I require that it just didn't quite have. What didn't I like? Overall, for me, the pacing is just way too slow, and I know exactly why it's being done. It's allowing us access to Dave, to kind of feel and connect with his introspection and his thoughts, and really kind of get on board with his mindset. However, yeah, it just plods along way too much. It can feel just really, really drawn out at times. What I'm trying to say, and I'm just going to come out and be honest and say it, I was really, really bored. I was horrendously bored for vast sections of this novel. Again, some people might really fall in love with those sort of aspects, but I was just very bored. You see, the thing is, the book has zero hook. Zero hook, because Dave is such a sort of soft and ploddy character as we sort of weave our way through his life. I was hoping that the Giles sort of connection, the book almost sets up this kind of rivalry between the two, and I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. This sort of relationship between the two is going to sort of build, and there's going to be these very impactful moments that sort of plot-wise, narrative-wise, create real sort of tension and excitement in all of the other kind of introspection. I was really excited for that, and it doesn't happen. Giles just sort of turns up, and we sort of get information that we could have figured out he was going to become from the very first chapter. There is no surprises, really. I mean, there is something to do with Giles's grandkids, which becomes a little bit interesting if you think where he started from a little bit later on, but for me, that was a bit too little too late. It's just kind of, yeah, there's no hook, there's nothing exciting in this novel at all. which is a massive shame because I actually was really excited by the very traditional sort of old-fashioned storytelling at the start. The first chapter in which Dave is staying with the Harlows, I was riveted. I was absolutely all in. And then nothing really sort of met the kind of excitement that I found of Dave being in that social situation. So yeah, it all kind of like, even the old-fashioned writing style just sort of got old quite quickly. And the next thing I really didn't like is I was drawn to this novel because it sort of mentioned experimental theatre. And that's my bread and butter. So I was like, oh, I would love to find out about a gay man's life growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like, oh, the 70s and 80s for theatre was just radical. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait to experience what this man went through as a gay man through those experiences at that time, with all the political shifts and the absolute vast and drastic changes in the theatrical landscape that was happening at that time, even in the 90s, when in-your-face theatre was all the rage. When you've got things like, you know, Sarah Kane and like Shopping and Fucking and like all these different playwrights, and even if we're looking at like experimental theatre companies like Forced Entertainment, or even in America like the Worcester Group, you've got these really radical, and they are experimental theatre companies making really incredible, interesting work. And I just don't think Alan Hollinghurst knows what experimental theatre is, and that was the big loss for me. He hasn't done any research. His idea of experimental theatre was a man showing his penis on stage, and that was like, whoa, my God, like he's in experimental radical theatre. This isn't crazy. No, Dave in this novel, he is an actor, and he just does plays. He just does some plays, and in some of those plays, there's some risque elements, but that is not experimental theatre. And I suppose, you know, maybe that stuff is a bit too niche for most readers to really care about. And maybe that's just a me thing, which it probably is. But then, I don't know, just say he was an actor. Just say he was an actor. It's the experimental theatre thing that just kind of drew me in and then wholly disappointed me. Honestly, Hollinghurst's version of what experimental theatre is the equivalent of watching the film Bambi. There is a realism and authenticity to this novel that I think a lot of readers are going to really connect with. They're going to feel like this feels human, like a human life. There aren't these big sort of like side plots and these big moments and things that happen. But, I don't know, I need a bit more meat in a book of this length to keep me really invested, and it just didn't have it. So overall, I thought this book was all right, and I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. The reason it's getting 2 stars is because I do feel like Hollinghurst has done a solid, and I mean a solid job, of blending its various themes with real precision and absolute clarity. And for that reason alone, it does get 2 stars. I don't sort of regret reading it, even though I was so bored and really disappointed in quite a few elements. Yeah, it's all right, but I can see a lot of readers enjoying it. For some reason, I kept thinking about Iris Murdoch's The Sea whilst reading this, and actually, every time I thought about it, I thought to myself, my God, how much I would rather be reading that book than this one. So have you read Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst? And if so, what did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please let me know in the comments below. And as always, I really appreciate you watching. I hope you are well, and I hope you're enjoying whatever you might be reading. I'll see you all on the next one.